8th grade school magazine sales, but this year was different. An all expenses paid trip to Europe was up for grabs. All I had to do was sell a Reader's Digest magazine. And then I got to go to the principal's office, and I would get to pick an application. And if it had the right thing under the silver dot, I would get to write a 25-word or less essay about what I could learn from an all expenses paid trip to Europe. I went home and I said, Mama, I'm gonna win a trip to Europe. How are you gonna do that, darling? Well, all I have to do is sell a Reader's Digest, and then I get to go pick a form, and if it has the right thing under it, then I get to write a 25-word or less essay. How hard can it be? My mom said, oh, don't get your hopes up too much, honey. You see, my mom lost her father in a horrible accident when she was 13 and a half years old. And when people experience trauma, particularly in childhood, they learn that bad things can happen and that you shouldn't get your hopes up too high. But I was in 8th grade, undeterred. I said, Mama, do you want to buy a Reader's Digest? She said, no, darling. Grandpa gives us one every Christmas. I said, no problem. And then I canvassed the neighborhood like every other 7th and 8th grader in the entire city. Trying to win a trip to Europe, would you like to buy a Reader's Digest? No. Trying to win a trip, Reader's Digest? No. I could not sell a Reader's Digest to save my life. And I wasn't smart enough to figure out I had an allowance and could buy my own. But the woman who didn't want my heart crushed, who knew that bad things could happen, said to me, sweetheart, doctors buy magazines. And the woman who wanted me to keep my feet on the ground drove me all over town. Nobody would buy a magazine. Hi, Dr. Brown, trying to win a trip to Europe. Would you like to buy a Reader's Digest? Sure, Sherene. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love you. I mean, this was the day before the end. And that man bought a Reader's Digest. And I don't know if he wanted one or if he was just a good man who saw a little girl with her heart on her sleeve. I went to the principal's office and he fanned out the forms. And I wondered if eeny, meeny, miny, mo would increase my chances of getting the right one. So I'm looking, my future in the balance, and I go, okay, I'll have that one. And I went and I sat on the stairs by his office. And I needed to know what was under the silver dot. And I spit on it. Yeah, but it wasn't spit. It was scratch off. So now I have a wet entry form that I'm terrified I'm not even gonna be able to scratch off, and I might ruin my horse if indeed it is under there. So I got out a dime and I very gently scratched it off. And there was Pegasus. I got it, I got Pegasus. I am winning a trip to Europe. And I went home and I did what my family does. We bandy about ideas. And I came up with my 25-word or less essay. And my mom went and sat at the typewriter and typed it on a form this big. And I don't remember the beginning of it, but pretty much the gist of it was, winning this trip to Europe will make me a better citizen of my town, my country, the world. please, 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 God, let me win a trip to Europe. And I mailed it off. And months came and months went, and I never heard a word. I got invited to a gymnastics competition, and it was over spring break when the trip to Europe was up for grabs. I turned them down flat. I think I'll be in Europe. They said, okay. That was the end of that invitation. And then one day, all junior high students, please report to the auditorium. So hundreds of us are jostling into the entry, and I look on the stage, and there is the man from Reader's Digest. My heart pounded so hard, my hands began to shake. Look at this, this is like 40 years later, I can still feel it. I'm shaking, and I know that I will absolutely die if somebody else won my trip to Europe. You see, my dad is a dreamer, and my father my whole life has said, dream big, sweetheart, dream big. Good things happen when you dream big. But sweetheart, the price of dreaming is pain. Not every dream comes true. Have you ever had a dream that you wanted so bad you could cry? Have you ever had a dream that you wanted so bad 40 years later you could cry? Those are the dreams that are so core to our being, the whispers of our souls, the things that we open ourselves up to, because to be hopeful and to dream is to be phenomenally vulnerable. And so there the Reader's Digest man was, and he said, this has been the best magazine sales ever. Like, you bet it has. What kid didn't want a trip to Europe? I bet all they sold are Reader's Digest. But I kept my mouth shut because I was in 8th grade. I didn't have my voice yet. And then he said, 13,000 entries were received. And we picked 17 winners, one from each region of the United States. And there is a winner at Dover Junior High. And then he paused for dramatic effect. I'm just like, get to the point, big guy. And as I awaited my fate with heart pounding and hand shaking, he called my name. Is that incredible? I went down to the front, y'all. I am from small town America. I am on the front page of the next day's newspaper. I'm serious. Biggest grin you'll ever see. Can't see my eyes because they're shut in joy. And I went to Europe, and I became a better citizen of my town, my country, the world. But more importantly, I began to allow myself to dream about the audacious. Because if a little kid from Dover, Ohio, can win an all-expenses-paid trip to Europe, what else could happen? Wow. You know, I had the privilege of parents who my entire life said to me, sweetheart, there isn't anything on this planet that you can't do as long as you're willing to put your mind to it and you work hard. And you know what? I believed them. And when I decided that I wanted to be a professor and get my doctorate, it never occurred to me that I would not be successful. Because my entire life, I had been told that I could achieve if I put my mind to it and I was willing to work hard. And then I hit my first stats class. Yeah. And I distinctly remember having this conversation on the way home from class this day. I don't think I can do this. And then my next thought was, I think I need to quit. And then the logical part of my brain said, so if you quit, what else do you want to do with your life? And I said, nothing. So the healthy part of my brain said, well, perhaps you'd like to go back to class and get to know the professor better. First name basis, Jim Collins, Dr. Jim Collins. Oh my gosh, he got me through stats. I had to work for that grade. And I succeeded. And I left the University of Wyoming, Ph.D. in hand, and became a professor. And that was really fun for a while. But here's what I want you to know is I believe each of us has a radar, a metal detector in our hearts, and that you need to learn how to play hot and cold. So my first job had been an administrative job. By the end of it, I was clinically depressed. It was not my skill set. It was not fun. That's why I went and did some mental health counseling and thought this mental health stuff is interesting. I want to help other people. And then I got to teach a class and I went, oh, I love the light bulb of learning. I love it when I watch people's eyes change. And so I did. I went and I got that doctorate and I became a professor. And what I would say to you is it was lukewarm. I loved the students and the teaching. The rest of it, not so much. I always look at it like I was this zebra who looked enough like them that they let me into the horse pen. But that what I cared about, they didn't get. And what they were passionate about baffled me. And so I would look at them, they would look at me, and we would coexist. It was warm. There were parts that I liked. It was a good job that I was good at doing. But it didn't fulfill the whisper of my soul. And then what I knew as time went on, I wanted to be a professional speaker. Here's how it started. I got invited to fill in for somebody who had backed out at the last minute. And I thought, I can do that, because a colleague asked. And then I went into like the reality zone, and I said, I don't like to speak. What the frick was I thinking? Here's what you need to know. 9th grade speech class. First talk, 3 minutes. I got up, I held my composure for 30 seconds. And then I started shaking and my knees started quivering. And then what I did, what only a 9th grade girl can do, I got the hysterical giggles. And I could not stop. Sit down and take an F. I had never received an F for anything in my life. I remember slinking back to my chair. I put my head down in shame. Tears coursed down my cheeks. And instead of saying, wow, he had a bad day and did not like giggly girls, I said, I don't like to speak. But I got to this conference and I made people laugh. And I went, hot, hot, hot. That's fun. And so then people would ask me to speak, and I would speak, and I would just go, this is the best thing on earth. It is so fun. Who has a job where they clap when you're done? Seriously, who gets to live that life? And then one day somebody said, will you come to our group? How much would it cost? You can get paid to do this? I said, I don't know. How much money do you have? Yeah, obviously I was not a savvy businesswoman at that point. But after a couple more years, as I honed my craft and I started making a little bit of money, I figured out people did this for a living. And I went, that's who I want to be when I grow up. I'm the child of educators. And here's what you need to know. There's not an entrepreneur in my family. Salary. Good, honest, hard-working people. The backbone of America. But I had no idea how to be a businesswoman. I clawed my way to membership in NSA because somebody had told me, you need to be a member of NSA. I had no idea you could go and learn along the way. That would have been helpful information. I got my 20 paid speeches in 1 year, and I arrived at the national conference with so much pride. And the entire conference was full of zebras. I came home and I said, Daddy, I found zebras. It's the first time in my life I found people like me who are good people who feel like they can change the world. And they're motivated to want to help. And I went, I knew that hot was right. And so in speaking, I look at it as having two distinct platforms. You need to be good on the stage. And I have worked hard to hone the natural gifts that I have been given. And the National Speakers Association, and particularly this Michigan chapter, oh my gosh, they have helped me become a force to be reckoned with on a stage. But the other pillar that was so problematic for me was the business portion. And one of the things that you've got to do if you want to succeed as a speaker, you have to figure out the speaking business. And once again, NSA has been absolutely invaluable to my growth. But you know what? I was clawing along and I'm like, I can't figure out how to make enough money to leave this lukewarm job to follow hot. And Eleni, dear friend that she is, said, come to a conference with me. And I hired Mark LeBlanc, a small business coach, to be my coach and to help me through some of my barriers and to teach me how to be a businesswoman. And guess what I got to do? I got to leave the university and speak full time. Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, thank you. I'll never forget graduation. This is my last act as a professor. It's graduation, I'm a marshal, I'm sitting down there on the very front row, and all of a sudden I went, no! And as I looked at the cliff that I had just run off, I went, but I don't want that cliff. And I went, okay. And I've moved forward ever since. If you want to live a life that you truly love, you're going to have to do a couple of things. Number one, you're going to have to listen to your heart. What is the whisper of your soul that never goes away? I can tell you from experience that I could stifle the whisper, that I could sit on the curb in discouragement, But I was never willing to let go of my dream because it was authentically who I am. And it was the life that I wanted to live. And so even when I'd have to dust myself back up, I'd do what it would take. What is the whisper of your soul? Do you know how to play hot and cold? And if you've done jobs that you don't like, or you grew up in a family that said, suck it up, sailor, this is your lot, you can really, really put the whisper dormant. But if you listen, you know what makes you happy. We get one ride on this planet. It is truly a one and done. Are you living your life? Are you living somebody else's? People are entitled to their opinion. It freaked people out that I left a tenured full professorship before I was old enough to retire. That freaked people out. And I'm like, but that's not my life. It's a good job I'm good at doing, but it's not a good job for me. If you're going to live a life you truly love, you're going to have to take risk. And you're going to have to set sail because the boat has to go somewhere. So are you listening to the whispers of your soul? Are you taking appropriate risk? The day I figured out I wanted to be a professional speaker, I did not quit my job. I know a woman, and she wants to be a star of television and of YouTube, and she's charismatic. She truly is. She quit her job with 5 YouTube followers. That's not enough runway. I may have waited too long, but build the runway, because you don't enter in and go, I'm flying. You enter in and you go, how the heck do you get gigs? And then it's like, you build your muscle and you build your expertise and you find your voice. And for me, you learn how to be a businesswoman. And then things begin to take off. You've got to be a risk taker, but be a smart risk taker. Calculated risk taker. Make sure you have the runway. Because if you crash and burn, you're probably not going to get back up. Because it hurts too badly. And it's too frightening. So are you listening to the whispers of your soul? Are you willing to take risks? Are you a calculated, smart risk taker? And then I'm just going to tell you the truth. My favorite part of this industry is being on a stage. I'll tell you, it is so much more fun than being a professor. I don't have to grade anything. And I'm back to people clap when I'm done. Thank you very much.